to 9/11. I mean, after the event, the Patriot Act passed. Everybody was begging, to have their freedoms taken away. Prior to 9/11, they never would have accepted it. And now we have a new patriot movement moving in this country, and exposing these events is going to take away their false flag power. Because, I mean, just like Kurt Haskell, where, I mean, he said that he wanted to make sure that the underwear bomber case was exposed because he knew there was something wrong with 9/11. This shows that people in this movement are having an effect, and we are taking the tools away from the New World Order and not allowing them to murder people and ride our ashes to their own political ends.
Holland, let's get more into your list there from your research, because you guys are there in Oklahoma. Some members of your team over a decade just obsessed with this, because you should be. It's a mass murder, and the government did it. My God, this is incredible. And it's incredible how they've used it, undoubtedly, to take our liberties and write public memos about how wonderful it was. That's their total arrogance at us, because they know the public's naive. It's time to stop being children and admit this. Let's go over some more of the nasty people who were red-handed there, part of the operation. I mean, you've got the governor's brother. What about him publishing a book before the thing where a Tom McVeigh is part of the secret circle or whatever and blows it up? I mean, this is incredible.
Some of these facts are just so amazing that they would even pass the plausibility test in a fiction story. We have the brother of the Oklahoma governor at the time of the bombing, Frank Keating, his brother Martin Keating, who is a self-admitted insider in military intelligence, writes a book called Final Jihad. According to the publisher, this book was written in 1992. This is about the time, mind you, that McVeigh was being recruited for secret government activities out of the Army, according to his own admission. Martin Keating writes a book called Final Jihad, which features a character named Ted McVeigh, who tries to bomb a federal building in Oklahoma City, a plot that is foiled by a state trooper. Now we take that fiction, that so-called fiction, we look at the reality that was presented to us the day of the bombing, is that McVeigh gets arrested after the bombing in Oklahoma by a state trooper. Now, this obviously is not a coincidence, and then no one can defend that. Obviously, there was inside knowledge on the part of the governor's office. We have talked to people who have traced a call from the governor's office to Walter Reed Army Hospital.
By the way, let me stop you. It did come, they wrote it in 92, came out in like 94. And what's weird is, after I made a big deal about this like 8 years ago on Wikipedia and on, but I own a copy. There's one here in the office. I just happened to mention this as a factoid. So I have the one published in 94. They come back out with it and say original publishing date, 1996. I mean, that shows, again, what they're doing. It's so amazing that even on Amazon they changed the date.
Well, they always try to cover their tracks, and that that was something that we saw here in the Oklahoma City case. Is the early hours, the truth always comes out in the media. It's within hours they get control of the story and start pushing whatever cover up they're going to perpetrate. In Oklahoma, only one news station maintained any integrity for a few months, which was Channel 4, and then the New York Times came in, bought the local news station, fired the program director and the lead reporter, and then any information that contradicted the official story was completely silenced.
The local media tried to do a good job here, and we could see firsthand how the feds came in, how the New York Times came in, and squashed all independent inquiry into the bombing. Channel 4 was interviewing John Doe number 2 witnesses, talking about what the tapes really showed, talking about the second bombs, talking about accomplices. Then all of a sudden it was just shut down.
And let's expand on that.
Well, Channel 4 started basically the original inquiry into the bombing. The first questions raised were why the office of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms in the building was empty. The ATF, which had started the Branches Davidian raid 2 years before to the day, was the supposed target of the attack, but their office is empty. One of the men who responded to the bombing, who was trying to look for his wife, he talked to an ATF agent who told him that they had been paged, notified by their pagers to not come into work that day.
Well, that's right. And Terrence Yakey and some of the doctors involved said within a minute after it happened, they were in full gear demanding, patch me up. I was up in there. And they're like, no, you weren't.
Terrence Yakey and Dr. Plumley were asking questions about when they showed up, why there were certain federal officials there on site. FBI officials, too. The FBI headquarters is several miles away. There were people there already, and yet Terrence Yakey was 4 blocks away. He was the first person to respond. A lot of questions raised. We show in this movie that the ATF story about what they were doing in that building is a lie. We name an ATF
and they practiced months before in New Mexico blowing up a Ryder truck. I mean, there is no end to these people. I mean, there is really no end to how evil they are. My God, it is just unspeakably wicked. But talking about the censorship, buying up that TV station and everything else that we saw and changing the publishing date on this book, that just shows you how scared they are of info. This info didn't have power. If the global terrorists, the social engineers were invincible, they wouldn't care. The fact that, I mean, seeing now military on the streets, checkpoints, going to arrest citizens, training that Oklahoma City investigators, including state reps, are terrorists. You get the manuals. I mean, it looks cartoonish because it's so over the top, but it's really happening. But you look at Hitler, Stalin, Mao, that looks cartoonish. Why'd they put up with it? Well, it's the authorities. So I mean, seeing everything happen today as it all comes true, this just adds to the urgency. Your views on that?
Well, it's very timely because as we talk about the NDAA bill passing with the indefinite detention of American citizens without trial, even if they're found innocent, you say, well, okay, who are they going to round up? Through Operation Defuse, documents, internal fusion center documents were leaked to us that show okbombing.net, which was the website originally ran by the Oklahoma Bombing Investigation Committee. A state representative, Charles Key, is listed under domestic terrorism. I mean, this shows the people that they want to round up because these institutions' primary goal above anything else is self-preservation, and they have to silence anybody that has the audacity to expose the crimes of the global oligarchy.
By the way, we've talked to investigative journalist Wayne Madsen and others who've talked to high-level federal informants. Judge Roll, and I've seen other connections showing this. Judge Roll, who got shot in the Gifford situation, and I heard this at the time. I was like, no, that was about a gun running thing, and he was going to expose it, was meeting with her secretly in a kind of a transpartisan deal. But now there's evidence that that was really a hit to basically cover up what was happening. But I mean, there it is. Just 6-8 months ago, they were saying it's a conspiracy theory. We didn't ship guns into Mexico. We only watched them at gun shops. Then it turned out they ordered them to do it. That was just a cover to blame the Second Amendment. They were really shipping 18-wheelers of guns in, cocaine back in. And now it's all there. New York Times, El Paso Times, Chicago Tribune, we've all covered it here in probably 15 reports.
Well, I mean, you see how the media is controlled this way. The same week we released our movie, Newsweek magazine released on its internet organ, The Daily Beast, an article that was supposed to be an expose of Operation PACCON in the early 90s. PACCON may have been the genesis of the Oklahoma City bombing. PACCON was an operation that the FBI and the ATF undertook to infiltrate every so-called dissident group in the country.
Yeah, no, McVeigh was part of that, going to every gun show, the Davidians, every event to scope out who they wanted to blame for the attack.
But when you look at the Newsweek article when it was finally released, that all mention of Tim McVeigh, Andy Strasmeyer, who we have cited in the Murrah building with bombs, and Operation PACCON have been excised from the final version of the article, and that has been proven because the original article was leaked out. So they are still exercising the cover-up here. They do not want PACCON getting out because that was where Oklahoma City may have been born, because it can prove that they were watching McVeigh, that McVeigh was surrounded by government informants from day one.
No, exactly. They always use another operation as the cover umbrella, just like with the 7/7 attack in England. It's admitted the government ran drills of the exact bus, exact trains, attacked at the exact same place at the exact same time. It's something like 20-something trectillion. That's billions of times all the grains of sand in the world that would happen. 9/11, every one of these events, so that if other government agencies bust the intercriminal group doing it, they say, oh, it's just a drill, like 9/11 with Tripod 2, with Giuliani, the attacks on the towers.
Yes, and we actually have a Senate aide that told Charles Key that it was that they had information that this was a sting operation that had gone bad. Well, you look at that.
That's like World Trade Center, where they cooked the bomb, trained the driver. The informant says you're going to let it go forward, knows they're setting him up. He records the FBI, Ahmad Salam, saying go ahead and let it happen.